proud Brooklyn native and City University of New York alum, Timothy Hunter is a longtime political advocate. He served as the president of the Student Government Association at New York City College of Technology, while also serving as an undergraduate student senate chairperson from 2019 to 2020. I virtually worked with Tim as a We Power New York City Youth Ambassador for New York City Votes in 2020. And then in 2022, at the age of 22, Tim ran for New York Assembly for the 43rd Assembly in New York, aiming to make New York a more equitable state with a focus on tenant protections, increased school funding, and investing in universal health care. He is currently the press secretary for the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and he's getting his master's from Baruch College. We are so excited to have Tim in the suite today.
I'm so happy to be in the suite, and excited to have a great conversation.
Yeah.
Excited too. Is there anything you want to tell the people about yourself before we get started?
Um, Not much. I would say Ramadan Mubarak to all those who observe. Today's first full day of Ramadan. Happy to be fasting for another month, and super excited to be here and talk a little bit more about a lot of the work that we've engaged in, a lot of voter engagement work that we're doing in New York City right now. Any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer all of them. Just ready and really excited to be here among two legends.
Yeah. Oh, Tim, stop
And,
it.
and it's Women's History Month, so happy Women's History Month.
Oh, thank you. You're a good politician already. You got my vote.
Chanel is an easy vote. She's easy to sway.
I hope so. You got to let me talk about some policies first before though.
Sure.
Okay.
So maybe for us to kind of like jump in and get started, how did it get started for you? Like, where did you kind of like find this passion to be in politics and one day run for like the position?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I don't like to think of myself as a politician. I like to think of myself as a community organizer. I feel like, a lot of politicians tend to engage in a lot of backroom wheeling and dealing, a lot of pay for play activity going on. And I'm someone that believes that government should be working for the people, especially the working people that, also work for our government as government employees or as our bus drivers, as our teachers. These are the people that I feel like government should be serving and providing as many resources to as possible. And I think that's kind of where I got my start, working in government through education. I was a former teacher. I taught high school students architectural drafting for a few years before, leaving my job to pursue student government interests. I realized very early on that I could only prepare 30 kids to go into the room, to go into the real world. But then when they get into that college classroom, if they don't have the tools they need to be able to succeed at that collegiate level, it's much harder. So I went to work trying to find out how we can increase support for financial aid programs at the collegiate level, make sure we freeze tuition at our CUNY institutions. And after a few visits to Albany and to City Hall to testify in front of lawmakers about how to make the City University of New York a better place, I said, I want to try to figure out how to make change in my immediate community. So I started working in an assembly member's office. Then I became a communications director in the New York State Senate. And then I kind of left that to try my hand at running, and unfortunately it didn't succeed, but it was still a learning experience nonetheless. And I'm happy that I still get to be a government employee and give back now in other ways, especially as it relates to engaging New Yorkers around elections, which is something that I care very passionately about, and something that Henry also cares about as well, as a former member of our youth ambassador program. We've been on a few panels together like this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we have. So I want to ask you a little bit more. You have such an interest in education, and I think there's such a lack of education surrounding voting, especially like in our public school systems, even private school. And so I'm wondering, in your opinion, what can we do to make people more motivated to vote, more knowledgeable about voting? Like, where do you think this reform starts?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of things that we can do to increase awareness around elections. I feel like New York has done a great job already so far of doing that. We can always be better. And I'll start with let's start with, they say it's the glows and grows, right? So I think some of the glows are like access to poll sites. I feel like has increased greatly over the past few years. Early voting wasn't a thing before and now is a thing. And you have a lot of people that are now going to, especially with COVID-19. People don't want to be all waiting in lines or all crammed into one poll site. Gives a lot of time and space to vote. Speaking of COVID, expanding access to mail-in ballots. Before we even talk about engaging people with democracy, we have to make sure people know the vehicles that they can use to let their voices be heard. I think as it relates to some of the things that we do at the CFB, we send out a voter guide. If anyone's received that, I think last year was a yellow or pink magazine in the mail that has like all the people that are running in your borough or in your district. We also try to like accommodate for different folks that speak different languages, or if English isn't their primary language that's being spoken at home. If you flip it over, there's probably another language on the other side of your voter guide. So I think that's like some of the glows that I think New York and New York City is doing a great job of engaging people around a democracy. I think now we need to focus, and a place where we can grow on is how we focus in the communities that don't turn out to vote as much, right? We know that our traditional voters are usually, they skew much older. They vote every single election. They never miss it. We should be trying to engage young voters, youth voters, voters that listen to this podcast, voters under 30, and trying to find ways that we can continue to like get them engaged in the democratic process. Also talking about those, communities where English isn't the primary language being spoken. New York City is a melting pot. And our voter rolls should also reflect that. We should make sure that people know they can get registered, but registration usually isn't even the issue in New York. I think it's like 4 in 5 New Yorkers are like already registered to vote. The issue is that people don't really vote in the primaries, which make it that much harder, right? Like people think it's already guaranteed that it's going to go to one person because New York's so blue or so this or so that. But that's not true. Local races matter too. So trying to engage, of course, folks from, communities that don't speak English or English isn't the primary language. Engaging with young voters is a big thing, especially with pre-registration. Folks can get pre-registered as early as 16, which is great. And then I think that third thing that we want to make sure that we're focused on is getting people to vote in those primaries and not just waiting for the general election to vote.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I'm not as knowledgeable about voting and what's happening as I should be. One, I will say that at the moment, I am outside the country. But there is a lot of like resources and tools, even here in France, that does help people to make sure that they register to vote, and that people have their ballots in and their mail ballots in time. And there is like this importance for the primaries. And I think when I was younger, I used to always be like, oh, like whoever my mom or dad's voting for, like that's who I'll vote for. But nowadays it's a little bit more challenging. So for young people, especially this is demographic that we kind of want to push more, what kind of resources and tools are currently out there for them to be more knowledgeable about the people that they should be voting for, especially in like more local areas?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like as it relates to getting involved, I think the Board of Election, every single like state should have a Board of Election website that you can take a look at, figure out what's up with getting registered, to figure out how to, sometimes they even let you order voter registration forms if you want to like bring a whole bunch of voter registration forms to your school and try to get people registered. I think I'm a little bit biased here. New York City Votes is an amazing tool for New Yorkers that want to like know how to engage with local elections. You go on their website, on our website, and take a look at how to get engaged. There's a lot of videos that are also up there in different languages. Our website translates into, I think, 16 or 17 different languages as well that you can access. So even if you're not, a New Yorker, you could always feel free to check it out just to look at what, I think really advocating for inclusion in elections could look like maybe in your hometown, in your place. I think that there's also, I think, a lot of issues as it relates to misinformation around voting as well, that I feel like needs to be addressed sometimes, like especially like in these huge elections, national elections, where it can change the trajectory of American history as we know it. We should have informed voters. And I think that starts very much with making sure we're ignoring disinformation when it comes up. Not everything you read on Twitter is true, or X, formerly known as Twitter. You know, and an understanding as well that it's important for candidates, I mean, for people to be able to research the candidates and know who they're voting for. And hopefully in the very near future, know who they're taking money from. So they can understand, you know, who's financing and bankrolling a lot of these candidates that are running to represent our best interests. Because sometimes they're trying to represent the best interest of a celebrity.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's so interesting you mentioned finances. I think a lot of people, especially lately with current events, people are talking a lot about, like, especially in America, how we're using our tax dollars, how that money is being allocated. And so I'm wondering also, just in this age of disinformation, like, and misinformation, how can people really make sure that what they're reading and what they know is factual, that it's accurate, that they're, I mean, there's all this artificial intelligence, there's ChatGPT, there's fake news, there's fake articles, social media, like misinformation is on the rise. So how do people actually know, like, what is true and what is right, and how can that relate to politics and voting?
Yeah, I think it all that's a really good question. You know, like the world is changing rapidly. I mean, I think when we were youth ambassadors, ChatGPT, I couldn't even wrap my head around the thought of that. And that was like a few years ago. You know, so just kind of thinking about how quickly you know, things have developed over time. I think we've seen very similar thing happen you know, with payment methods and campaigns, like, right? Like people write checks, give campaign contributions in cash. Now there's credit card transactions, and credit cards are now becoming like the best or the most like accepted way of giving to your favorite political candidate. So as times change, you know, methods of reaching voters change, methods of accepting contributions change. Who knows? Like, you know, as we're seeing, like people are having conversations about whether or not crypto should be having a role in like you know, campaign financing in a certain way. I mean, I don't know if I would be accepting Bitcoin if I was running for office again, but you know, I think that there's a lot of conversations that are being had around all these things. And I feel like we've already seen AI in some election related misinformation. I think it was like, was it New Hampshire, where there was like a fake Biden robocall that went out by some magician or whoever. You know, it's kind of you know,
It's crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. Telling voters to stay home. You know, we're talking about things that can be the difference in who becomes the next leader of the free world. You know, and I don't think that government, unfortunately, I don't think government is right now equipped to tackle AI in a meaningful way ahead of this upcoming election. But I hope that based on what happened in 2016 and in 2020 and what will happen in this election, which is almost a guarantee, you know, that we're going to see widespread mis and disinformation, sometimes cultivated by AI, sometimes cultivated by bad actors. And I hope that, you know, Congress acts in some way, shape, or form. There's a few bills that I feel like the Brennan Center and a few other great good government groups are tracking that will limit the use of AI, or like make AI, like make it illegal to use AI in like election related materials. I think it's important for us to continue to you know, follow up with these things and make sure that we're doing our part to try to like get them passed as engaged voters that don't want misinformation to run rampant. But I also think it has to do a lot with where you consume your information from. If you know, like if you're just accepting whatever you're hearing from like these outlets or these unvetted sources, you know, it's a very easy way to get misled and like kind of create these opinions that sometimes are just like based on like, you know, unfounded truths and or what can be perceived as truth because it just makes sense in your head right now. And you know, you saw someone with 1 million followers on Twitter post it. I think another prime example of misinformation that we've seen recently here in New York was there was the like, I guess the riot or like the fight that happened between the police officers and some suspected migrants. You know, the migrant crisis has been a big thing here in New York City. One of those people that were initially arrested were like, they had charges dropped against them because it turns out they weren't even there, during that. However, that didn't stop some pretty big Twitter influencers or ex-influencers from like, attacking the Manhattan District Attorney, saying that they were letting criminals go. So, like small things like that can shape public opinion if it gets into the wrong hands. So, it's important that we're like also being skeptical of these sources if we're not getting our information from reliable outlets.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I want to shift gears a little bit. So I want to talk about you running for office. It's very impressive at your age, at our age, actually, just to be running in general. I think it's a scary task. It's daunting. And so I just want to tell us a little bit about the experience, like who or what inspired you to run, the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I mean, I think my my upbringing and more specifically my younger brother inspired me to run for office. I feel like the world and specifically the area that I grew up in central Brooklyn was changing so rapidly. And I felt like if I had to act to kind of preserve that upbringing that I had, and allow my brother to also experience it, as first generation Brooklynite. My mom immigrated here from England. My dad immigrated here from Jamaica, so I'm the son of immigrants. Yes, yes.
Wait. Are we cousins?
Maybe we could be. When I saw
Same
Cummings,
story.
I was like, I know a few Cummings, and I have some really close family members. So maybe
Stop it.
like this,
Stop it.
we should
I
do
was gonna
ancestry
tell
and
her, but then I was like, I wanted to see her reaction when you said it.
No, because my mom's also from England with the Jamaican descendants, and my dad's from Jamaica. So,
Yes. I actually have like two like basically cousins of mine, named
yeah.
Kira and Shaquille Cummings. And they live here in New York. So maybe who knows? We might have some mutual Facebook friends
Okay,
who
next
or
family
either one
reunion.
of
Next
those.
family reunion. I'm like, yes, that's my cousin up on the podium.
Yeah.
President Tim.
No, no, no. Well, we have to. We gotta talk about this failed race first, though. But so I ran because I wanted better for my community. I felt like I understood a little bit how government works since I had worked in both houses. I ran for a state legislative seat. And if elected, I would have been the youngest Black state lawmaker in New York history. A good friend of mine, Khalil Anderson, who's currently elected, is right now, well, the youngest Black state lawmaker in Albany, and I think he's like our age, like right around 20, 24, 25. And I felt like there was an opportunity when some member that I used to work for had stepped down. It was an open seat, so I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And at first, I've been on campaigns before. I've seen it play out, but it's different when you're on the like managing end of it, and it's your face that's like on the posters, and it's your family members that live in the community, and you're trying to convince voters to vote for you. I think a lot of people have serious questions about your approach to housing, your approach to transportation, your what issues you want to fight for in Albany, especially because it's a role that you are like barely here for half of the year. You're in the state capitol, advocating for your district. And then you spend like the next half of the year here in the district working with community members, addressing constituent services issues. So a lot of people also wanted to know why. I wanted to do like why you versus everyone else. And I felt like I didn't have an issue communicating with my community members, and a lot of them knew me because I've worked here before. The issue I had was with fundraising. I was 22 years old, and I was trying to call people and ask them to give, and my other friends are also in their 20s, or like my coworkers, they're teachers, they don't have a lot to give. I don't know millionaires. I don't know, the movers and shakers of New York politics that influence decisions. So I felt like I was very much in the out crowd, and I was only able to raise maybe 1/5 or 1/6 of what both of my opponents raised. I was able to come in a third, a close second place though, which I appreciate. We got double-digit percentage of the vote. So even though we raised a small percentage of what both of my opponents raised, I think we still did relatively well for the race we ran. and for a first-time candidate that was running at age 22. So, I hope that people learn from my experience and try to run as well. And as like now we have a state matching funds program, we have a city matching funds program that make it easier for new candidates to run for office in New York State and New York City. So, if I had to give any advice to anyone that was thinking about it, just jump right in. Jump right in and do it. I think that that's something that if you feel like you talk to your right people, you talk to your kitchen cabinet, your closest friends and family, and they're willing to support you, why not? I think that that's the question that you should be asking instead of why. And if you feel like you can answer the why nots, then it makes sense, I think, to throw your hat in the ring. And we need more young people in office because if we don't, it'll be the status quo that'll be being upheld. And I already know that you all talk about a lot of really interesting, high level national issues that are happening, in the world and, giving a voice to that. And we need young people to be at the table when these decisions are being made. So thank you for also serving as a beacon of hope and good information that we can give to your listeners here.
Oh, cousin Tim. I feel so like highly motivated just like listening to you speak. And I used to be that person. I was like, one day I'm gonna be president. But then after some time, you feel like you get a bit jaded by like the world and the conflict, and sometimes seeing things not being like planning out the way that you want it to. So what are the things that keep you motivated in times of like maybe running the race and seeing it that's not going your way, or maybe you're in politics and you're just seeing something like, I don't know, like either the misinformation or politicians like doing bad? Like what keeps you motivated and going?
Yeah, I think what keeps me motivated are the ladies on this podcast. I think that when you see young people that are continuing to do the work, you have to ask yourself, why am I not doing the work? Like, what is happening that's stopping me from engaging with my community and engaging with those around me in a very meaningful way, in the way that I'm seeing all these, like, why is Greta Thunberg able to get up in front of all these people and say that we can't ignore climate change, and I'm just sitting on my couch, like not doing anything. So I think it's important to like allow yourself to be inspired by others. And I think that inspiration can push you to be better. And it's not always a competition. It doesn't have to be a competition. I think that we don't need everyone to become the president of the United States. What we need is a good president of the United States, and then we need great like federal judges to make sure people aren't being wrongfully incarcerated. We also need great city council members to stop rent from going up. We also need great state lawmakers to protect the woman's right to choose in states that are taking that away. So I think that it's less about how do I become the one person to solve all of society's problems, and it's more about how can I do my part to like continue to bring great ideas into the world and make change happen in my community while also inspiring others along the way. Because I think that's the only way that we make sure that it's not just a moment, that it continues to be a movement, which is what we want to do here.
Yeah. Wow. So good. So good.
Yeah, I think it's so important that you touched on that it's not only a competition, it's not like me versus you. I think coming from just like a very competitive school environment, being a competitive person, I always felt like it was me versus everyone else. And it only was when I realized like everyone can have a seat at the table that it was like, okay, we can all work together to make these changes. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of it. It makes you realize that it's not just about you. It's not just about your ego and like the things you want to achieve and the things you want to do. It really is like community building, creating this like long-term effect, this long-term change, and it's more than any one person can do. And I think it's cool when you see other people your age doing these things, because you look at them and you're like, if they can do it, why can't I? Why can't I do something like this? And again, just realizing that you should use these people and their journeys as motivation is super important.
I could not agree more. If we have time, I could tell a quick story about
Of course.
and
Yeah,
about
Tell us stories.
you
Tell
have
us all
time.
your
You have time.
stories.
so I think that there's like, I remember hearing the speech that was given like a while ago when I was up in Albany, and it basically went like there was these three people that were like walking by this lake, and it's a very like weird lake because there's like an island in the middle of the lake, and it has like a house. There was an old man that lived in his house. And the old man was kind of like out on the island, frustrated, looking into the lake. So the three people kind of like called out to the old man and was like, "Hey, sir, like, is everything okay? Do you need anything?" And he's like, "Well, I lost my pet turtle in this lake. And if anyone can get it, I'm like a wizard. I'll grant any wish you want." As like try to get these three people to kind of like save his pet turtle for him. So the three people are like, "Oh, this seems pretty easy. Let's like get in and try to do it." And then they look in the lake. Again, I promise you it was a weird lake. So the lake is also infested with sharks and crocodiles. It's
Oh,
like a really
wow.
scary lake. So, the three people that were there were like, I don't think that I want to jump in this lake. I think the pet turtle is a goner. We shouldn't do it.
Screw the turtle.
The old man is really, really wants his pet turtle back. He's like, "I'll give you anything you want in the world. Like, please just save my turtle." So, hour passes, 2 hours passes, no one jumps in the lake. The old man turns around to go back inside because I think he just calls it quits. And then he hears splash. And there's one person that's there just like swimming for his life in the lake. Swimming, grabs the turtle, ducks and dodges all these like obstacles, all these sharks and crocodiles, makes it to the shore of the man's house and gives him the turtle. The old man says, "Thank you so much," gives him a towel, wipes off his face, and is like, "Please tell me like what wish you want in the world. I'll give you any wish in the world. Thank you for getting me my pet turtle." And the guy responds, "Well, really, the only thing I want is I just want to know who pushed me in the lake." Um, and I think I
No.
tell that story to say, right, when
No.
life kind of like shows up and people push you into positions of leadership, or there's an opportunity to make a big jump, don't hesitate or shy away from it. Just jump in the lake and swim and figure it out. Like sometimes you got to figure it out on the spot. But you never know what'll happen when you get that turtle to that person, So maybe it's someone that will become a friend for life or take care of you, or a job opportunity, or a life opportunity that you just would have never gotten unless you jumped in the lake. So that's my like inspiration
Oh,
to
wow.
maybe make too many impulsive decisions.
That's not where I thought this story was going, but I love the
I love the message, but so many questions. I feel like the man could have jumped in to save the turtle. I don't know why he's
Yeah.
soliciting random people
He
to
was
go
a
save his
wizard.
turtle.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't understand how that, but that story really stuck with me. It stuck with me,
Yeah.
throughout life, and I always find myself being pushed into lake somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw. So can you tell us what are you currently doing now and what are your goals for the future? At least give us a few months into the future. Doesn't have to be 5 years, but just a few months from now.
For sure. Happy to give like a little bit of a few months in. Yeah, I think even in 5 years, I don't even know where I'll be. So happy that I don't have to go that deep into it. But right now I'm working on my graduate degree, as said earlier. So I'm finishing up my master's in public administration at Baruch. I actually graduate this May. So excited to be done with that. I'll have my NP master of my master's, all right, in public administration. And this summer, I'm going to be working on my law school applications as well. I know Emery and I talked about this a little bit when we caught up a few weeks back. But I'm also an aspiring attorney, so working on putting my applications together. I have to take the LSAT one more time, so please pray for me for that. And yeah, I hope that I get into the school that I want to, but I really just care about helping people and becoming an attorney to help folks that sometimes the law doesn't allow us to help, or sometimes become victims of legislation or I don't know precedents that unfortunately can cause immense harm to communities like the ones that I'm from.
Yeah. Aw. Thank you so much. Like we wish you all the best going forward. And when you run again, just know that you get my vote.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll see what happens. I have a beautiful partner who also I think is very, very talented, and I think that she would make a phenomenal elected representative as well. So we'll see. So we'll see where life takes us. And I think no matter what, we'll be doing something that helps people. And I'm super stoked that I have the opportunity to be here with you both and answer questions and talk about democracy.
We are too. And I want to wrap up with like a super, super big question. And I just want to know, do you think that we can actually make change at the political level? What does this look like right now? And what does it look like in the future in a perfect world where I don't know, things are reformed in a way that more adequately impacts and serves people of all backgrounds.
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer in striking while the iron is hot. I mean, it also makes for good tools, just in general. So I think it's important to take full advantage of the current political circumstance. There's a lot of organizing around, getting aid, to not just, of course, Palestine and Gaza and everything that's happening there, but in places where conflict is arising across the globe. There's always a humanitarian crisis where you can help out with. I think as it relates with like domestic politics, there's so many like organizations that are doing meaningful work. Every Town for Gun Safety, a lot of the education organizations that like I was a part of growing up. Even like as it relates to advocating, for a woman's rights to choose and protecting, abortion access in a lot of the states. There are like, no matter where you are in the country, you can donate, you can make calls, you can talk to people, you can phone bank, you could drive out for a weekend and knock doors. There's so much that you can do. So there's always, always, always an opportunity to get involved. And if you're someone that's like, I want to get involved, I just don't know how, just figure out what issues you care about the most, what you care about talking about the most, and then find organizations that give you an outlet to do that. That also is a great way to just build character and build leadership, skills, just by just continuing to engage with your passions. And I think that's something that is really, it means a lot to us as like Gen Zers. Like, I feel like we care a lot about things. Like it takes one TikTok video to set us off on like, oh, like this is so messed up, what's happening? So, I think we should just give into that and channel that energy, not into more procrastination on TikTok, but into making change. Which is what I think I tell folks that are thinking about getting engaged here.
Yeah. Oh, you gave us so many good gems and so much good advice. So the last thing we'll end off with is we always want to close out asking our guest what is the first thing that comes to their mind and the last thing they want to leave the audience with.
Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind, I think so. Just to clarify, so it's like the first thing that comes to mind as it relates to like what I want to tell everyone.
Anything.
It can be
Anything?
anything. We hear the craziest of things.
Craziest
It has
thing?
to do with the
Okay.
deep sometimes.
Yeah, it could be anything.
All right. Okay. One more story. I feel like I can wrap it up in
Okay, give us another story.
Oh, this comes to mind too. At a separate event that I've overheard someone say there's usually three responses to adversity, right? Think of adversity as this like food item that I'm going to mention, and think of the response as the food item I'm going to mention, and the adversity as like this boiling hot water. So you could respond by being a carrot. When you put a carrot in boiling hot water, sometimes it gets like really soft, mushy, and sometimes people respond to adversity in that way. You could be an egg. So when you put an egg in boiling hot water, it gets really hard. And sometimes people bottle up their emotions and become like this hard-boiled egg. Or you can be a coffee bean. And what happens when you put a coffee bean in boiling hot water? You can get coffee from it, right? Even if you take it out, you ground it up and you put it back in the water. Sometimes coffee tastes even better. So the first two get really impacted by their environment, but the last one impacts their environment. So I challenge everyone that's listening to be the bean, be the coffee bean,
Be the bean.
and try to change your environment that you're in rather than giving in to the external pressures. That's what comes to mind.
I love that. I love that. And now we got the name of the episode. Be the Bean.
That was my first thought. I was like, this is the name of the episode. Thank you for making our job easier.
Yes. Oh, Tim, we wish you all the best going forward with everything.
Me too. It was
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to chat. I'm glad you and Chanel were able to connect now too. Yeah, we just learned so much, and I think this episode will inspire a lot of people to get more involved politically, even maybe run for office. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Fingers crossed, and I'm happy that I was able to find another cousin.
Yes. So yeah, add me to the list. Add me to the family tree. So this has been Chanel.
This is Anne-Marie Gaidosh.
And this is Tim.
And this has been Sweet 15.
The recording has stopped.